All right, Doug Karsch, Scott Anderson, 97 won a ticket. We asked a question on Twitter. What's Michigan's path to victory against Ohio State? How do you see it going down? How can they get there? I will tell you one thing. Like I talked about how I thought Day's demeanor last year was indicative of a coach. It looked to me like a coach who was wound pretty tight, and then I thought his team might have reflected the way his head coach felt, the way the head coach was. The other thing that Michigan has really capitalized on the last 2 years that I'm not sure they're going to be able to capitalize on this year is special teams. Last year, Dominic Zavada was good from 50-plus in a 13-10 game. He made a 50-plus yarder, and he obviously kicked the one at the end. Michigan, Ohio State botched a kick return and started to drive at like their own 6. Ohio State went 1 for 3 on field goals. And the year before, Michigan was 3 for 3 on field goals, and Ohio State was 1 for 2 on field goals in a game that was decided 30-24. So, and they were plus 10 on punts. Like every exchange of punts gave Michigan another first down. This has not been Michigan's strength this year. Their special teams play has been uneven. It's been, quite frankly, bad at times. Zavada still has an absolute nuclear weapon as a leg, but he can't seem to dial it in. And now that Andrew Marsh is returning punts, I think he already has the 2 longest punt returns of the season in minimal time.
There you go.
Yeah. But honestly, the special teams advantage that they have held the last couple of years, I'm not sure is there. So, that's something that they've used. But what I do love about this game is the weather. I mean, the weather is it's not going to be good. So where do you see a path for a Michigan victory?
Well, I think we talk about the running game, and I think whoever wins the running game is going to win this game. And the other thing with it is turnovers. For the Michigan to win this game, they can't turn the ball over. You can't give Ohio State a short field, and they are going to have to effectively run the football. I still think the team that wins that battle with the total yards is going to do it, but if you
with rushing yards or total yards,
with rushing yards,
okay.
But if you are able to run effectively enough, you can stay in the game. It means you have to have some longer sustained drives. Maybe they fizzle out at the end, but if throwing the ball is going to be difficult, that's going to be into Michigan's favor. But they're going to have to run. You can't just say, "Oh, sweet, now Ohio State can't throw," because Ohio State can run the ball. They've got 3 running backs there that average over 5.5 yards a carry. And it's not like, 2 of those guys have 20 carries. I mean, these are 3 guys that have carried the ball this year. And Bo Jackson is turning into somewhat of a revelation this year, and he's averaging almost 7 yards a carry. And I'm sure he'd like to get to 1,000 yards. To do that, he's going to have a nice day of like 180 yards on the day. But it's tough sledding to do that. Michigan's got a defense that if they know that they can be one-dimensional because the weather is going to show that, then maybe, just maybe, they can stay in that game and do that. But I think that's how it is. They're going to have to run effectively. They're going to have to stop Ohio State from running it, and they cannot turn the ball over. And you also, it's all the little things. You can't have stupid penalties. The pre-snap penalties, don't do it. You're going to kill yourself doing that. Holding penalties, the holding penalty is the most. To me, it feels like it's the most punitive penalty out there. It is 10 yards. One little mistake, one little grab costs you 10 yards and also costs you everything you just gained on the play. Do not do that. If they're able to do those things, they have an excellent chance of winning. But a couple of those things, you're going to stay in the game.
So, it's interesting you bring up a couple of those things. Their rushing defense, Ohio State's rushing defense on paper is terrifying. They allow 2.7 yards per carry, 80 yards rushing per game. They've allowed 4 rushing touchdowns all year, and they've gone through this whole season with allowed no opponent has rushed for more than 100 yards. That hasn't happened in Ohio State football since, I think it was prior to 1936, okay? They're allowing 7.5 points per game. The Ohio State defense on paper is ridiculous. Now, I went through this a couple years ago with Michigan's 2023 national championship team, in which they got late in the season, and people were saying, Michigan's resume isn't that strong because the schedule's so weak. And the schedule was a fair question about Michigan. Ohio State has like the 58th best schedule in the country. They beat Texas in week 1. That's their only ranked win. Now, winning at Washington isn't easy, but Washington's not a ranked team. Winning at Illinois isn't easy, but Illinois doesn't seem to be quite as good as maybe people thought they would be. They beat Penn State, but that was Penn State without Drew Aller. It was a zombie team that had lost their coach. So the numbers are ridiculous, and anytime you can do that, you have to respect that team. It is possible, though, that they have fattened up on an easier schedule, which Michigan did in 2023 until they had to prove themselves late.
Well, that's the thing, is that there's not a whole lot of, look who they did it to. I mean, they did the first week of the season, they shut down Texas, and that's it. They've given up, I think there have been 2 games since then where they've given up 2 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. That's it in a single game. But they haven't played a who's who of the Big Ten. Big Ten's got some good teams, and Ohio State hasn't had to play them. Michigan is a good team, and they're going to have to face them and improve it all on Saturday.
Common opponents, if you look at common opponents, Ohio State beat Washington by 18, Michigan beat them by 17. Purdue, Ohio State rolled Purdue, and Michigan beat them by a touchdown. And I think, God, this is so what's weird about the B1G now, this overinflated conference. I think that's their only common opponents.
Wow. That's crazy to think. But then again, when you have, 16 teams, 18 teams in the conference? Good God.
Isn't that weird?
That is weird.
Well, and then there's this. You don't know until you know. You got 2 first-time starters in this game. One's a redshirt freshman, one's a true freshman. Typically, as a formula, that's not ideal. They're both incredibly talented. Sayan has elite receivers, and we don't know if those guys are going to play. Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate sat out last week. Brandon Innes is no joke, but the 2 first-time starters in this game, stage is huge, pressure is huge. How do they respond?
Well, they got a big tight end they use a lot. The kid from Purdue, he's awfully good. Running backs can catch the ball out of the backfield, and I think that's really where the game's going to be kind of in the balance, because throwing the ball downfield may not be in the cards, but utilizing plays at the line of scrimmage, throwing it on slants and just short routes to your tight ends and running backs, that is something that can be done. Which, by the way, can also play to Michigan a strength there too. I mean, Marlon Klein's pretty good as a tight end. And their running backs can catch the ball. So I imagine that's going to be a big part of both teams' offenses when it comes to throwing the football. Yeah,
short passing game might be a thing. And look, Zach Marshall, who has been playing more at tight end, he made a catch last week when Bryce fired a fastball over his head, and he got his paws up there and just pulled it out of the sky on what was a high degree of difficulty catch. I think you could, say that he might be a bit of an emerging weapon for Michigan. Jordan Marshall is going to be back in this game, so we shall see. Bryce is no stranger to playing in these kind of conditions. Julian Sayan was a San Diego kid who went to Alabama. Might be a little bit more foreign to him as we look for advantages for Michigan. We asked a question on Twitter. What is Michigan's path to victory? You can comment there, and we, as we often do, read the best comments on the air. AJ writes in, protect the football, must get points off any and all OSU turnovers, run the ball effectively to keep OSU's offense in the field, and protect the football. So protect the football twice. I also don't think a loss would be all that bad. This is a young team, and it will be a learning game for them. Patrick says, it's cliche, but they have to be able to run the ball, control the clock, and use Bryce's legs. From Dog Stole Greg on Twitter, Bryce with some early runs to get the defense worried about his legs. Marsh keeps making big plays. Defense needs to keep everything in front of them. No explosives. U of M 31-24. Going back to last year's game, watching that game again and going over some of the pregame notes, I said the most important stat in that game was FGA for Michigan. Ohio State's going to move the ball. Field goal attempts is and they held them to 3 field goal attempts, of which they only made 1. But I don't know that FGA isn't another huge stat in this game for Michigan.
Well, yeah, I think it is a good stat. But if Ohio State's able to run the football, it's not going to matter.
NR says, try to keep it low scoring. Use Bryce's legs. Going to have to win the turnover battle. George says, run the ball. Hope every OSU receiver pulls a hammy. 2 or 3 pick sixes would probably help. Well, they're dealing with injuries right now. I don't hope anybody gets hurt. In fact, I kind of hope they play.
So let me ask you something about it, because last year you said it was almost like they were walking towards the gallows, and yet Michigan still ended up winning the game. The big criticism after a couple years ago was, I think it was Hutch's senior year there when they beat Ohio State. The big criticism of Ohio State after that game was that they got beat up at the line of scrimmage, right? That they got it handed to them right at the line of scrimmage on both sides, whether it was on offense or on defense, that they got manhandled. And I think Ohio State's been battling that ever since, like that they weren't tough enough up front. And last year was kind of the same thing. They got labeled like they weren't tough enough. And you can be all tough after the game, but it doesn't matter because you didn't get it done during the game and at home. Is that a factor this time around too? Do you think Ohio State is going to try it? Because the way I look at it, Ohio State can run the football, and Michigan has not been as stout as we've seen in the past with the defensive line. They just don't have the players up there yet. These guys could be good, really good players when all is said and done, and maybe this is their big game where they show up. But if Ohio State is solely focused again on proving how tough they are at the line, is that going to be a detriment to them?
Well, there's one of two things. If they choose to do that, great. And if they have to do it because of the weather, also great. They clearly have elite weapons outside if those kids play. And if they can't use them as much or choose not to use them, then I think that brings Ohio State's big advantage back closer to Michigan's level. But we'll talk more about it later. We got the college football blitz thingy straight ahead. It is 97.1.